I woke up around 2:30 in the morning, drenched in sweat. The air in the room wasn't hot. If anything, it felt too cold, but I had that bone-deep, gut-level feeling that something was off. The kind you can't explain to anyone without sounding crazy. The kind that grabs your chest like a vice and refuses to let go. I reached across the bed out of habit. Empty. Tracy's side was cool, sheets untouched. Of course they were. She was in Charleston, supposed to be on a relaxing long weekend with her sister, Hannah. A pre-baby breather, she'd called it. I'd encouraged it, actually. Told her I'd managed things at the auto shop, that she deserved to unwind a bit before the baby came. She'd been glowing lately. Emotional too, but I chalked that up to the hormones. We were only a few months out and I figured a short trip would help her clear her head. Help both of us, honestly. Still, lying there alone in the dark, something didn't feel right. I picked up my phone and checked for messages, nothing. I sent her a quick text. Hey babe, everything okay? I waited. Watched the screen like a teenager in the early 2000s hoping for a reply. The read receipt never popped up. I stared into the dark for a few more minutes before the hum of my old business phone, buried under books on the nightstand, broke the silence. I blinked at it. That phone hadn't buzzed in months. I only kept it charged out of habit in case I needed to reference an old contact or invoice from years back. Nobody used that number anymore, not since I switched the shop over to my newer line last summer. But there it was, an image message. No number. No text. Just a single photo. My thumb hovered over the screen before I tapped it open. It felt like time stalled the second the picture loaded. Tracy was at a bar, one I didn't recognize. Her head was tilted slightly, hair falling to one side like it always did when she was tipsy and laughing too hard. Her smile wasn't aimed at the camera. It was aimed at the man sitting across from her. They were holding hands. His face was turned, not fully visible, but what I could see sent a rush of cold through my veins. He was younger than me. Clean-shaven. Wearing a dark shirt with the sleeves pushed up just enough to show a tattoo on his forearm, something tribal, maybe. His posture wasn't friendly. It was an asterisk, mate. Familiar. My first thought wasn't even coherent. It was just a string of heat and disbelief that pulsed through my body like a current. I stared at the photo until my screen dimmed and went black. Then I called her. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was soft and slightly slurred. Hey, babe. Everything okay? Yeah, I said, hearing how hollow I sounded. Just woke up. Couldn't sleep. You. She let out a small laugh. Hannah and I just turned in. Long day. Lots of walking. She's already out cold. You have a good time? I asked, not sure why I was playing along. Just dinner and a little stroll. Nothing fancy. There was a pause. Just long enough for the weight of the silence to stretch thin. You sure? Yeah. Why? Her tone shifted, sharper, suddenly alert. I got a message, I said carefully. To the old shop phone. A picture. I could hear her breath catch. What picture? She asked, too quickly. You at a bar. Holding hands with some guy. Silence. Tracy? Are you serious right now? She snapped, the sleepiness vanishing. You're going through your old phone, digging for something to be mad about? It vibrated. I didn't go looking for it. She exhaled sharply. That's probably Hannah playing a prank. She likes messing with filters and stuff. You're really letting it get to you. I know what I saw. No, Brandon. You think you know what you saw. There's a difference. Her voice was rising now. I'm trying to enjoy a weekend with my sister before our entire life changes, and you're accusing me of what? Cheating? Based on one photo? That you weren't even supposed to see. That last part stung. Not the accusation, her defensiveness. The way she twisted it back on me. Classic misdirection. I'm not accusing, I said, trying to stay calm. I'm asking. And you're not giving me a straight answer. She went quiet again. Then she said, flatly, you're paranoid. I've never gotten a message to that phone in over a year. And now, out of nowhere, maybe it's spam. Or a mix-up. God, Brandon, can we not do this right now? The conversation was over. She made that clear with a clipped, I'm going to bed. I'll call you in the morning. And then she hung up. I sat there, phone still to my ear, listening to the deadline like it might change what just happened. After a few minutes, I opened the photo again. Looked closer. Her left hand was visible. No wedding ring. Her nails were painted, something dark, almost black. She never wore that color. Said it made her hands look cold. I don't remember how long I sat there, but the sun was starting to lighten the window by the time I finally put the phone down. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her laughing at someone else's joke, hands entwined with a man I didn't know. And I couldn't stop wondering who had taken that photo and why they'd sent it to me. After that night, everything started to look different. Like I'd been watching our life through a frosted window and someone had finally wiped the glass clean. Tracy came home 2 days later, all smiles and light conversation as if nothing had happened. She hugged me like she meant it, kissed me with that practiced ease, asked about the shop, made small talk over dinner, and then said she was exhausted from the trip and needed an early night. I didn't bring up the photo again, didn't mention the call or how she dismissed me. I just watched. And once I started watching, I couldn't stop. Little things jumped out at me. Things I brushed aside or rationalized before. Like how she'd started locking her phone a few months back. New password. Changed her lock screen from a picture of us to some generic beach landscape she used to leave it lying around. Now it was glued to her hand like it held the secrets of the universe. Or how she suddenly had to work late 2, sometimes 3 nights a week at the clinic. It made sense at first. Extra hours meant extra pay, and with the baby on the way, we needed every penny. But then I remembered, Tracy was salaried. She didn't get paid overtime. She also stopped talking about work. Completely. She used to tell me about her patients, her coworkers, the funny things that happened in the break room. But now? Nothing. When I asked how her day was, I'd get a shrug and a quick busy. And then there was the day I came home early. It was a Thursday. I had a light load at the shop and decided to close up around 4. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. No music playing. No scent of dinner cooking. Just the soft echo of voices. I followed the sound to the bathroom door. It was cracked open just enough for light to spill out. I paused, listening. A man's voice. Muffled like it was coming from a speaker. Laughing. Then Tracy's voice, soft, low, responding. I couldn't make out the words, but I stood there for a good 30 seconds before the water turned on. She came out a minute later, wrapped in a towel, surprised to see me. Babe, you scared me. I thought you were working late. I wrapped up early, I said, trying to sound normal. Who were you talking to? She blinked. Ha! I heard voices. She laughed, waving a hand dismissively. Oh, that was a podcast. Something Hannah recommended. True crime. You'd hate it. I nodded, said nothing, and went to change. At the time, I accepted it. Why wouldn't I? But now, with everything piling up, that moment played differently in my head. Her reaction, the way she stammered before finding an excuse, it all felt rehearsed. Another thing, she stopped touching me. Tracy used to be affectionate. Always reaching for my hand, kissing me on the cheek as she passed by, resting her head on my shoulder during movie nights. But those gestures became rare. Forced. Like she remembered she was supposed to, so she did, but her mind was somewhere else. Somewhere far away. Our dinners turned mechanical. We'd sit at the table like strangers. Her on her phone. Me picking at my food. And when I tried to engage her, ask about the nursery, baby names, doctor appointments, she'd nod along without really listening. Or she'd steer the conversation to safer, neutral ground. Like she couldn't wait to get through the meal. Then one evening I noticed the wine. Tracy had always loved her wine. Dry reds, usually. But she'd stopped completely when we found out she was pregnant. It was a hard shift for her, but she was firm about it. She said it's not worth the risk. So I was confused when I took the trash out and found 2 empty wine bottles in the bin, both recently used, still damp inside. I stood there for a minute looking down at them like they were foreign objects. Maybe they were from before the trip, I told myself. Or maybe she'd had a friend over. But the truth was, I didn't believe either of those things. Not anymore. I started checking the calendar on the fridge, the one we both used to mark appointments, events, reminders. Her handwriting started disappearing from it. The prenatal visits she used to be excited about weren't listed anymore. When I asked her about them, she'd say she forgot or that she'd already gone during her lunch break. Always vague. Always dodging specifics. I even checked her pill drawer one night when she was in the shower. The prenatal vitamins were untouched. Half the bottle still full, expiration date well out. She used to be meticulous about those. I didn't want to become this guy, the snooper, the paranoid husband counting vitamin tablets. But something was unraveling. And every loose thread I pulled revealed another. Even at night, she'd roll away from me. Say she was uncomfortable. Blame it on back pain. Or heat. Or anything else that kept us from being close. I stopped trying after a while. The wall she built between us wasn't just physical. And still, I told myself to wait, to not jump to conclusions. Maybe she was just tired, stressed, overwhelmed with the pregnancy. But then I remembered something. A week before she left for Charleston, I'd walked past the guest bedroom and noticed the door was shut. Odd, since we never used that room. I pushed it open and found her suitcase lying open on the bed, half-packed. She'd said she hadn't started packing yet. Inside the bag were outfits I didn't recognize. New clothes, tags still on. One of them was a dress, short, tight, low-cut. Not exactly maternity wear. I asked her about it later, casually. "Oh, I bought a few things on sale," she said. "Figured I'd need some stuff for after the baby." I nodded, but the unease stayed with me. Because Tracy wasn't shopping for post-baby comfort. She was dressing for someone. Someone who wasn't me. I always thought if the truth ever came out, it would feel like relief. Like stepping out of the fog and finally seeing things for what they were. But when it happened, it wasn't clean. It wasn't satisfying. It hit like a punch to the gut. Messy, cruel, and impossible to unsee. It started with a message from a guy named Carter. We weren't friends, barely even acquaintances. He owned a detailing shop on the other side of town and had brought his truck to me a few times for transmission work. Good guy. Quiet, kept to himself. So when I saw his name pop up on Facebook Messenger one afternoon, I almost ignored it. "Hey man, hate to be the one to show you this, but I figured you'd want to see it before someone else sent it your way." Attached was a video. Just a grainy, shaky clip taken from across a crowded room. The kind of footage you'd expect from a drunk friend trying to capture a good time on their phone. But it wasn't a concert. Or a party. Not for me, anyway. It was Tracy. My Tracy. Wearing that same tight black dress I'd seen in her suitcase. She was dancing, no, grinding on the same guy from the photo. His face was clearer this time. Sharp jawline. Dark hair slicked back. Big hands resting on her hips like he owned her. Like they were regulars at this. They weren't in a quiet booth or some anonymous crowd. They were in the center of the room, laughing, sipping drinks, pressed together like there wasn't a single reason in the world to keep space between them. At one point, she leaned up and kissed him. Right there. In the open. No hesitation. No guilt. My ears rang. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hand was clenched so tight around the phone I thought I might crack the screen. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an accident or a joke. This was real. I didn't respond to Carter. Didn't even finish the rest of the video. I sat at the kitchen table, the quiet of the house pressing in around me like a vice. For the first time in days, I didn't feel confused. I felt wrecked, like someone had cut the last thread holding me together. She came home that evening acting like everything was fine. Said her sister had dropped her off. I nodded. Didn't say much. Couldn't. My words were buried under 100 questions I didn't know how to ask without exploding. But one thing kept needling at me more than anything else. The pregnancy. She hadn't mentioned it once since coming back. No updates. No morning sickness. No complaints. Nothing. Just silence. I didn't want to believe what my brain was telling me. But the possibility had started to bloom like rot. So I checked the mail. There it was. An envelope from the OBGYN's office. Tracy had left it on the kitchen counter like it meant nothing. My name wasn't on it, but that didn't matter. I opened it. The letter inside was short, dry. It mentioned a follow-up appointment regarding her recent miscarriage. Dated 2 weeks before her trip to Charleston. My heart stopped. I read it 3 times before it registered. She had miscarried 2 weeks ago, and she hadn't told me. Hadn't said a word. Hadn't even hinted. Instead, she went on that trip. Instead, she let me believe we were still having a baby. She'd been lying with her body, with her words, with her silence. That lie that she was still pregnant was the worst part of all. Worse than the cheating. Worse than the video. Worse than the photo. Because it wasn't just betrayal. It was we*P*nized hope. She knew how excited I was. How I'd started clearing out the spare room. How I'd spent nights scrolling through baby name lists and reading parenting forums. She let me paint the crib. Let me hang a mobile above it. And she knew. The truth was unbearable. I didn't confront her that night. Couldn't. I barely slept. I just lay there next to her in the dark, listening to the slow rhythm of her breathing, wondering how she could be so calm, so untouched while I was falling apart beside her. The next day, I left work early. Told my foreman I had an emergency and drove straight home. I walked into the bedroom and found her sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone like it was any other day. "Tracy," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked up, eyes wide with something between confusion and fear. I held up the letter. Her face went pale. "You lost the baby," I said. "And you didn't tell me." She didn't deny it. Didn't say a word. Just stared at me like I'd caught her with her hand in a fire and she couldn't decide whether to pull it back or let it burn. "You pretended," I said. "For 2 weeks. You let me think we still had a future. You used our baby to cover up your lies." Still, she said nothing. "You kissed him," I added, my voice cracking now. "You danced with him. While I was here, making space in my life for a child that doesn't even exist anymore." She looked down then. Silent. Like words wouldn't make it better, so why bother? I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked out. The next few hours are a blur. I drove without direction. Ended up at a park on the edge of town, sitting on a cold metal bench watching kids play on a jungle gym, parents chatting nearby like the world hadn't just crumbled in someone else's chest. I didn't know what to do. What to say. How to move forward from something like this. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay. I didn't go home that night. After everything, the video, the letter, the silence, I couldn't bring myself to step foot in the house again. I parked in a motel off Route 17, a place I hadn't been to since high school when we used to sneak away for beers and bad decisions. The room smelled like bleach and cigarette smoke, but it was quiet, and that's all I needed. Quiet and distance. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me, trying to picture my next move. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want a confrontation, not anymore. What I needed was closure. Something real to mark the end of what used to be my life. The next morning, I woke up to 7 missed calls. All from Hannah. I didn't answer. But the last voicemail she left was different. Her voice was frantic. "Brandon, it's Tracy. She's at MUSC in Charleston. They found her passed out in the hotel bathroom, empty wine bottles, a bunch of pills, I don't even know what all. She's alive, but you need to come. Please." My heart seized up. Not because I didn't care. I did. That was the sick part. Even after everything she'd done, even with the wreckage she left behind, I still cared. Still loved her in some pathetic, aching way I couldn't turn off. But I didn't rush. I took my time. Packed my bag. Called into the shop and told them I'd be out for a couple of days. Then I got in the truck and drove south, the same route she had taken a few days ago, trying to relax with her sister while lying to my face. By the time I got to Charleston, it was raining. The hospital was cold and sterile, as they always are. The nurse at the front desk directed me to the emergency ward. I expected panic. Drama. But the place was oddly quiet. I found Hannah in the waiting area, curled into one of those stiff plastic chairs with a coffee cup in her hands and red-rimmed eyes. She stood when she saw me. "Where is she?" I asked. "Room 112. Stable. Sedated." The doctors had said it wasn't quite an overdose, but close. A dangerous mix of alcohol and anxiety meds compounded by dehydration and sheer emotional burnout. They called it a breakdown. I thanked her and walked toward the room without another word. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and damp fabric. I paused just outside the door, staring through the narrow glass window. Tracy was unconscious. Wires snaked out from under her hospital gown, leading to machines that beeped and blinked quietly beside her. Her skin looked pale, almost gray. Her hair was pulled back loosely, face clean of makeup, lips slightly parted like she was caught mid-thought in her sleep. I didn't feel anger. Not then. I felt hollow. I stepped inside. The room was dim, only the glow of the monitors lighting the corners. I pulled the visitor's chair close and sat down, resting my elbows on my knees. "You know," I said softly, "I thought the worst part was losing the baby. Then I thought the worst part was the video. Then the letter. But it wasn't any of those things." She didn't stir. "The worst part," I continued, "is that I don't even recognize you anymore." Her hand twitched slightly. I wasn't sure if it was real or reflex. "You let me believe we were building something together. And I was stupid enough to buy into it. But you knew. You always knew." I reached into my jacket and pulled out 3 things. The wedding ring I hadn't taken off since our ceremony. I placed it gently on the table beside her bed. A printed screenshot *T of the video Carter had sent me. I folded it once and slid it underneath the ring. And a note. Handwritten. Just a few lines. "Tracy. You chose your escape. I'm choosing mine. I loved you. God knows I did. But I won't be the last person in this bed who does. Goodbye. Brandon." I placed the note on top of everything else, then stood. The machines kept beeping. The storm outside kept falling. I didn't look back as I left the room. By the time I stepped outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. I climbed into the truck, hands trembling. Not from nerves, just from the weight of everything I had carried for too long. That night, I drove back to Savannah. No radio, no distractions. Just the long, dark road and the sound of tires humming beneath me. When I pulled into the driveway, it was nearly dawn. The porch light I'd left on was still glowing, casting a warm circle on the front step. I stood there for a moment, key in hand, wondering how much of this house I'd have to unlearn. How many smells, sounds, and shadows I'd have to reclaim. Inside, everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I walked past the nursery without pausing, went straight to the bedroom and opened the drawer where we kept our important documents. Insurance papers, tax returns, and the folder labeled Miller, Brandon, and Tracy, legal. I added one more paper to it. A divorce petition. I'd already filled it out, dated and signed. All that remained was filing it at the courthouse downtown. A formality, but one I needed to see through with my own two hands. Because this chapter? It was over. I filed the paperwork the following morning. No fanfare. No second thoughts. I walked into the courthouse right as they opened, handed over the petition, and waited under the flicker of bad fluorescent lights while a clerk with tired eyes stamped and processed my future. 32 minutes later, it was official, the start of the end. Word spread faster than I expected. It started with a few quiet conversations at the shop, customers asking careful, roundabout questions. Then came the texts from old friends, the "hey man, heard something" kind of messages. I wasn't sure who leaked it. Maybe someone at the hospital. Maybe Hannah. Maybe Tracy herself. But within days, everyone knew. Or at least, everyone knew enough to piece together what had happened. And then came the video. I don't know who shared it first, but someone in the local community group on Facebook uploaded it. Carter's footage, clipped down to 15 seconds of pure heartbreak. Tracy, arms around a stranger, laughing like she hadn't a care in the world. The kiss. The drink in her hand. The way she clung to him like she was weightless and free. Like none of this, me, the baby, our life had ever existed. I didn't watch it again. I didn't have to. What stunned me wasn't that the video went viral locally, it was how people responded. The comments section exploded. Some folks expressed shock. Others outrage. But most were on my side. I've known Brandon for years. That man would give you the shirt off his back. Poor guy. Always spoke so kindly about his wife. This is just heartbreaking. Tracy worked at my clinic. Guess we all know why she kept calling in sick. She didn't just cheat. She let that man believe he was about to become a father. I didn't ask for their sympathy. Hell, I didn't even want it. But I was grateful in a quiet, uncomfortable way. It helped, knowing people saw the truth. That they weren't buying whatever story she might try to spin. Because Tracy did try. After being released from the hospital, she didn't come home. She moved in with her cousin in Atlanta, a temporary setup that quickly became permanent. We never spoke. Never exchanged another word. Everything went through lawyers. But I heard things. People talk. Especially in towns like ours. She tried to get her job back at the clinic, but the board had already seen the video. Her supervisors said it created a disruption of trust, whatever that meant. I wasn't part of that decision, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a sliver of justice when I heard she'd been let go. She applied to 2 more clinics in the area. Both turned her down. Eventually, she left Savannah for good. Atlanta didn't treat her any better. The mutual acquaintances we still had, the ones who hadn't already taken my side, told me she was struggling. Professionally. Financially. Emotionally. She hopped from job to job. Room to room. Even posted once on her private Instagram about starting over and learning to forgive herself. Forgive herself. That one stuck with me. She hadn't reached out. Not once. No apology. No explanation. No letter to try and salvage her side of the story. And maybe that was for the best. I wouldn't have believed it anyway. I threw myself into work. The shop became my sanctuary. We'd always done solid business, mostly regulars, some walk-ins, word of mouth keeping us alive. But after the divorce, something changed. People came out of the woodwork. They'd stop in just to say hi. Book unnecessary tune-ups. Ask how I was holding up. Not in a pitying way either. Just genuine concern. You don't deserve what she did to you, one older lady told me while I rotated her tires. You keep your head up, son. Good men are rare. The support meant more than I could say. It gave me purpose again. I started extending shop hours. Took on more clients. Reinvested in new tools and tech. Hired a few extra hands, one of them a guy named Marcus, a vet who had just come back from deployment and was struggling to find steady work. Another was Kenny, fresh out of prison, trying to get his life on track. Both of them were quiet at first. guarded. But I saw the same thing in them I saw in myself, someone who needed a second sh*t. They didn't ask questions about Tracy. Didn't pry. Just showed up, did the work, and kept their heads down. And that was all I needed. One day, a reporter from a local paper stopped by. Said he was doing a feature on community resilience. Asked if I'd be willing to share my story. I declined. This shop tells enough of the story, I said. The rest doesn't matter anymore. But it did. It mattered in the way people looked at me with respect, not sympathy. It mattered when a dad brought his teenage son in and said, "This is the kind of man you want to be, not the guy who runs when life gets hard." It mattered when, despite everything that fell apart, I started to feel proud. Not proud of what happened, but proud of how I'd come through it. Tracy, meanwhile, faded like a ghost in the rearview mirror. Every few weeks, someone would mention seeing her name on a resume, or spotting her at a coffee shop in Midtown. But the stories always ended the same: she looked tired, sad, older. I don't say that with joy, just as a fact. Any attempts to blame me on social media in whispered side comments never stuck. People knew me, knew the kind of husband I had been, knew what I'd put into that marriage even when it stopped giving anything back. The truth wasn't just on my side, it was etched into the timeline, backed by photos, video, silence, and a single printed note left in a hospital room. I kept that note, by the way. Not for nostalgia. Just as a reminder. It's folded up in my desk drawer under a pack of spare keys and a flashlight. I haven't looked at it since the day I wrote it, but I know every word by heart. You chose your escape. I'm choosing mine. And I did. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't grieving. I wasn't drowning in what-ifs. I was free. And freedom, I learned, doesn't always come with a celebration. Sometimes it comes quietly, through the hum of an engine, the scent of grease and rubber, and the steady knowledge that you're still standing. Still building. Still here. 8 months passed. Life didn't just move on, it rebuilt itself, brick by brick, quiet and solid. The days blurred into the rhythm of work and small routines. Mornings started with coffee and sunrise drives. Evenings ended with tools in hand and the sound of a radio playing old country songs while I cleaned up the shop. I hadn't heard Tracy's voice since that hospital room. But one night, curiosity got the best of me. I had a new number, something separate from everything tied to my old life. I stared at her contact info for a long time before hitting call. She picked up on the third ring. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious but not scared. Like she was expecting a customer, not a ghost. She didn't know it was me. That was all I needed. I didn't say a word. Just listened to the silence hang between us until I ended the call. No anger. No goodbye. Just confirmation. She hadn't changed. But I had. That same week, I met Harper. She came by the shop in a beat-up Corolla with a busted AC and a nervous laugh. Said she worked nearby at a group home for kids. Something about her voice stopped me cold, not flashy, not overly sweet, just honest. Real. She didn't know my story. Didn't ask. And that made it easier to just be me. We started slow. Coffee runs. Walks by the river. She had a calmness I hadn't realized I'd been craving. No drama, no games, just genuine conversation. She asked questions and actually listened. She noticed the little things, like how I tapped my fingers when I was thinking or how I always checked my rearview mirror twice. She made space for me without making me feel like I had to fill it. That's how I knew. 3 years after everything fell apart, I stood beside a quiet lake in Tennessee and married Harper. It was a small ceremony. Just a few close friends, a simple arch made of driftwood, and vows we wrote ourselves. No grand speeches. No theatrics. Just truth spoken quietly into the open air. I looked at her, and I didn't think about Tracy. Not once. The auto shop had grown into a regional chain by then. 5 locations. Dozens of employees. I made it a mission to hire folks who'd been overlooked. Veterans like Marcus. Guys like Kenny who just needed a sh*t. People like me, really. People who'd been burned but kept going anyway. That's the thing about starting over. You stop trying to explain the fire and start learning how to carry the flame. I heard Tracy came back to Savannah once. A friend mentioned it offhand at the diner. Said she was working part-time, trying to keep her head down. I didn't ask for more. Didn't want to know. Some ghosts are better left alone. And me? I stopped needing closure. Stopped searching for revenge or reasons. The past didn't need my permission to exist. But it also didn't get to define me anymore. Everything I'd survived led me here. To a life built on truth, respect, and quiet resilience. No more pretending. No more saving people who didn't want to be saved. Just peace. And for the first time in a long, long time, that was enough.